Hi everyone, this is MYC Uncensored, also known as Maryland's Youth Center Uncensored podcast. My name is Rhapsody. I'm one of the MYC podcast volunteers, and today I'll be wanting to talk about attachment styles. Specifically, attachment styles being too attached. So, I wanted to talk about this because I came up across a few videos within the past few weeks on some people just being really anxious that they don't know what their partner is doing, like 24/7. Like, I'm talking texting every single hour, FaceTiming every single night, which I don't really find that there's anything wrong with that. But we'll dive in as to why it actually may be wrong. But it just got my mind kind of in this rabbit hole as to, like, why is it nowadays that a lot of the times some of us are like really obsessed with just wanting to find out what their partner is doing every single second of the day, and as to why that is toxic, really, and how come that became the norm, and things that kind of just make it easier for us to kind of dive in deeper into our toxic traits. So today we'll be talking about a anxious attachment style. So, according to Perth Counseling and Psychotherapy, attachment refers to emotional connections that you have with another person. So, there are four expressed attachment styles in the attachment theory framework. There's secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. In this podcast, I wanted to focus on romantic partnerships, particularly in those that experience anxious attachment styles. Since, it got me thinking, I was like, is it really normal to like want to text your partner like every hour of the day? Like, what the heck? So, firstly, what is an anxious attachment style? So, defined by Cleveland Clinic, anxious attachment is an insecure style of attachment that is characterized by a high need of reassurance and support, stemming from strong desire of meaningful relationships or some sort of fear of abandonment or rejection. So I won't go too deep as to, try and organize as to like why you're acting that way. I feel like I just want to mention that because I feel like a lot of people don't recognize that there's a lot of unhealed wounds from your past or your childhood that manifest into habits that you have now, and you may not recognize that it's really doing a lot more damage than you really think it is, not just for others but also like for yourself. Hence why I wanted to dive in my anxious attachment issues and some things that I can do to kind of help myself just be a more functional person without having to know what my partner's doing 24/7, especially when it comes to girls that have a weak sense of self and they don't really know how to really function around a relationship, since they're so young, and they don't really know how to navigate themselves, as how they act, how they should express things, or how they should act. So things like that. So I have a few things that I wanted to mention that you may actually find in yourself to identify if you have this sort of anxious attachment style. So one big one that I find to be really funny, because I have this issue as well, I'm sure a lot of my friends do, and maybe girls my age. By the way, I'm around 18 years old in the making of this recording. So making fake scenarios in your head, oh my gosh, like, it's something that, or like, I think in TikTok they have this like terminology. I don't really know too much about it. I haven't really researched on it for this topic, but it's called maladaptive dreaming, where you end up just kind of zoning out and you make fake scenarios in your head that are obviously in favor towards you, or sometimes even like the worst possible events, and you kind of like pause throughout, like your consciousness kind of like pauses throughout the day thinking about that fake scenario in your head. And the reason why this is actually really damaging and really dangerous is the fact that, number one, it kind of wastes your time into kind of doing what you're meant to be doing. So obviously, like, procrastinating what you're supposed to be doing because you're daydreaming about things that aren't happening, but also because it's making an expectation of your partner that isn't true, And without evidence is kind of giving them this like bar or this expectation that they don't even know is really placed upon them, really. And an example of this would probably be like, let's say the whole like, if he wanted to he would, girl, he wouldn't even know. Like, let's say that you really wanted this, like, let's say Pandora ring, for example, right? And you've been like googling it, kind of showing him things like that, and you daydream of like him buying it, but you never really expressed that you wanted it. You're just kind of giving it as an idea to him, like how cute it looks, rather than really saying, oh, I want to buy it. So it kind of sets an expectation that, oh, I want him to buy it for me, you know? But he never really knew that he was really meant to be buying it. So it kind of disappoints you in the end of the day that he's not really doing what you wanted him to do in the first place. And that kind of goes deeper into a different level of issues in the relationship. But I'm not really going too much depth into that. But yeah, making fake scenarios in your head, even with yourself, like having to look or act a certain way just for your partner, things of that nature, really. But that's an issue that I feel like a lot of people haven't really realized is really damaging, which is making fake scenarios in your head, not just for yourself, but it's also really damaging to other people. This kind of also kind of connects into my other point, which is the constant need of validation from your partner. And I feel like this is a bit nuanced in a sense that if you're young, especially to the listeners of this podcast or to other volunteers, we're usually younger women. And I'm not saying this applies to everyone, but a lot of times we don't really have a strong sense of identity or a strong like sense of self, which is fine because we're developing still. But this kind of causes us to think that our partner is a part of our like self-identity, which mind you, like it kind of does help into like relationships do help build up your personality and the way you navigate through them, but it shouldn't be like a core function for you to like go day by day. Like you shouldn't need to have a boyfriend or a partner or a girlfriend in your life just to function normally. And this honestly is something I feel like social media kind of plays a role upon. I also wanted to dive into like, I guess, the gender role issues that social media kind of inflicts onto younger people, not just females, but I guess the constant need to bombard our For You pages and content that life is better in a relationship, or that life is like lovey-dovey in relationship, which don't get me wrong, I think that it is, especially in healthy relationships. But when you force I wouldn't say force, but when you influence people into an idea of a relationship that isn't necessarily true, which is like buying them flowers every week, or like going on vacations all the time, or buying really expensive gifts that you know your partner can't afford, it ends up being really harmful to everyone and yourself as well, because you set up once again these expectations from social media that no one really knows how to navigate, or no one knows really how to reach, because we're so young. And they see an example on Pinterest, for example, and they automatically think that if I don't have that in my relationship, then he doesn't love me, or she doesn't love me. Like, you get what I mean? But I do want to acknowledge as well that a main goal as to why a lot of us act this way is that we seek closeness and security from our partners. I'm not saying that it's valid that we really should seek it through these type of things, such as surveying them 24/7 and whatnot. But a lot of the times it's because we end up just really want to be validated, and we seek some sort of other ways to measure our value as people, and how others treat us, really. I also wanted to discuss on why technology is kind of feeding into more of the anxious attachment styles. Things like location finders, like Live 360 or Snapchat, um, even like messages that offer you like a way to share location with your partner. It kind of makes it lose some trust that you have to when they say they're going somewhere like for example, they're like going to KFC and then you have to double check that. That kind of feeds it into more like you don't really trust your partner in a sense. That as well. Also, things like activity blobs, like or activity circles, like that little green dot right at the end of some people's profiles. If they don't respond to you within like freaking 20 seconds, like who the hell are you talking to? Like who else are you talking to? Um, things of that nature. I feel like social media and technology definitely does play a part into kind of catalyzing more of people's like anxiety in relationships. But that's something that I've personally found, even in my personal relationship, like having to have activity status on, location on, make sure that you read within this amount, which is honestly a bit sad because it's like, why don't I have the security to kind of tell myself, just trust your partner, and they have a life too. So this is kind of rolling into my next topic. How do you not get attached, or what can I practice to detach myself, really? So obviously I'm not a psychologist or some sort of relationship coach or anything like that, but some of these things I've practiced kind of help me just to decenter my partner from my life, that my relationship isn't everything and it's something that I shouldn't place as the holy grail as to how I should value myself as a girl. So first of all, it's recognizing the type of attachments type or style that you have. So obviously in this podcast, I was talking more about the anxious attachment style, and it's something that I've recognized in myself, especially from the things that I've noticed for the definition of anxious attachment styles or habits that I've seen that I think are particularly too controlling. Yeah, so recognizing things like that, there's a lot of papers and a lot of YouTube videos that offer, different methods as to how you can measure what type you are. So I would definitely check those out. A method I would also like to say is to diversify yourself or diversify your personality. Like pick up new hobbies. Like, kind of dive into your interests. Don't quit an interest just because you come into a relationship and it forces you to spend less time with them. I think it's important that it's actually more valuable the amount of time you spend without your partner than you are with them, in a sense that how do they fit into your life, not your life fitting into them, or having your whole life surround yourself in theirs. So that's one thing I'd say, like draw, like get into volunteering, join NYC podcast or something like that. Just find a way to value yourself other than a relationship, or build skills, or just continue your education, anything that kind of helps you avoid having a partner as the center or as purpose in your life. So it's very important to stay grounded whenever you're in these relationships, or really whatever type of relationship. It doesn't have to be romantic in a sense, but really co-workers even as well, is to don't daydream fake scenarios. I think like avoid when you feel like you're diving into a scenario that's fake, like snap out of it. I feel like a way for me to kind of snap out of it is when I look in the mirror. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like running around in circles, like listening to TikTok audios. What the heck am I doing? It's really strange in a way, but one way would be just be kind of like making sure I'm hydrated, kind of. Like I feel like if I don't drink water, like just have a bit of cold water, and it kind of like helps my body like not think too much about it, because like the cold water, especially during Australian winters, they kind of shock my body. That's something that I've noticed. um another thing well Another thing that I also wanted to add in was, like, whilst I think social media offers some sort of guideline as to how your partner should act, aka red flags, beige flags, green flags, I don't necessarily think that it should be used as a checklist for how your partner should act. Now, obviously, the exceptions are anything that's really financially, physically, or mentally abusive red flags. I'm not really an expert onto those, but if you do your own research as to how you can find them, maybe that would help out a lot. Actually, we just did a recent podcast on toxic relationship experiences by Dee and Sabina. That was released on Wednesday, the 11th of June. And maybe you can also listen to that as to how they found their red flags, and how sometimes that doesn't really appear obviously when you're so in love with someone. So I would check that out as well. But I said that it should be used as a checklist. It shouldn't be used as a checklist for how your partner should act, in a sense that having them do certain things, like buying you things, saying certain things, looking a certain way, acting a certain way, because it ends up just, yeah, it's not really healthy for you. It's a bit toxic in your point of view, because you're expecting someone to do something that they don't even know you want, and then you get disappointed that they don't do it. So it kind of ends up being in this loophole of just, they never meet your expectations because they don't even know that it's expected of them, or sometimes because it's just not financially doable, or it's just not something that they're really comfortable doing. Those are things that you should really consider when you put those ideas onto someone without them really knowing. Or when you don't have a great sense of self, that it ends up having to depend your whole value on how someone else treats you, which obviously you can't really control that. And sometimes things aren't going to be desirable to your way, and you end up just having a low self-esteem as a result of that. Okay, so that is the end of my little mini study on attachment styles, specifically anxious attachment styles. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Once again, my name is Rhapsody. I'm just one of the volunteers here at MYC Uncensored Podcast. You can find us at MYC_uncensored to find out more information, or if you want to join in one of these podcasts. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and have a good rest of your day.